Now that I've launched Clo 3D, I'm going to show a few aspects that might make this appealing to some of those who like to alter patterns and sew for themselves and others. The first fabulous feature is the avatar. And there's an avatar library that corresponds with ASTM size charts for both Mrs. Plus and Petite sizes. And this is for men, women, and children as well. So I'm going to click on Avatar. And we have a folder for females of version 1, a second version female 2, kid, male, and a second male version. I'm going to start with female 1. Now you can select the style of your avatar. I'm going to choose Emma. I've been using Emma for quite some time. Now the default for Emma, I'm just going to turn her around. She's very tall and slender. Now if I want to change her size, which most of us would because we probably don't look like that, I would go to Size. Now in the Size folder, I'm going to drag this open. We have, let me do it in list view here. We have ASTM Missy Curvy, Missy Straight, Petite Curvy, Petite Straight, plus sizes Curvy, plus sizes Straight. And then there's also a profile for maternity. I'm going to go with the straight sizes, and let's choose a size 14. Now watch the avatar. You're going to see her instantly change to the ASTM size 14. So I double click on that, and here she is. Now let's say you want to further adjust the size of your avatar, and you can do that with precision. We'll go to Avatar, Avatar Editor. Now there's a lot of information here. Now this chart shows you the current measurements for this avatar. Now there's a couple of different detail profiles here. There's Advanced Dress Form, which gives you a lot of the different measurements that you would use that would correspond to a dress form that you have. And it's, even though this avatar is not a dress form, it's perfectly fine to use those measurements if that is what you would like to do. Now, if I go to the drop down here, I can go with Basic, and you can start with Basic, see how you like the adjustments, and then you can continue to adjust from there. I tend to like using the Advanced Human Body because it gives quite a bit of control, and it corresponds to something a little more intuitive since I actually work with body measurements. So the height is currently 5'5". So let's say I wanted her to be 5'6". I would go and change this to 66 and hit enter. That immediately changed the height. And I usually recommend, and so does Clo 3D, starting with the bust. So let's say I want the bust on this to be 38. And let's take a look at the waist. Let's say we want a 35-inch waist. Hit enter. And then let's go to the high hip and low hip. Let's say for the low hip, I want to change this to 42. Now all of these are precisely what I've asked for. Now the only downside for the manipulation here is at this time they do not have a bra cup measurement. So you have to be a little forgiving when you are doing your measurements and fitting the patterns, and keep that in mind if you have a fuller bust. There are some workarounds, and there are some other free programs that allow you to create an avatar that does allow you to change the bust shape. It just is not, unfortunately, something that's available directly in Clo right now. So I'm going to change her back to the default. I'm going to close this. And we'll see what else can you do in Clo 3D as somebody who sews for themselves, a personal user. Many of you are familiar with Lacala patterns. That's at lacala.co. And for this demonstration, I'm going to download a free pattern. If you click on free patterns and then click on women, it'll take you to all of the free patterns that they have available. So I'm choosing this cute little dress pattern, and I'm going to apply standard measurements. Now, you can certainly apply your own custom measurements, but for this demonstration, I'm simply going to go with a size 14 US, and we are populated there. And it may or may not correspond perfectly with the avatar that I have already established in Clo 3D, but we're going to find that out. Now, Clo 3D will allow you to import PDF files, but there's a few tricks around it. Whenever possible, I really enjoy being able to get my hands on a DXF AAMA file. So that's what I'm going to do in this case for the free pattern. And even though it's free, we still need to add it to the cart. And then we will need to check out. And then, of course, that pattern will be emailed to your inbox. Okay, so I received my email from Lacala, which includes the DXF that I asked for in AAMA format. Now, the reason why I'm showing you my Gmail inbox is if you look at the little thumbnails of the files that they sent, they do always send a little PDF, regardless of what type of file that you order. And then I also have the DXF here. Now, if you notice, I can actually see in this thumbnail the actual pattern. Now, in your Gmail, you might not see that unless you have the free Autodesk plugin that allows you to preview DXF files. And I'm actually pretty impressed that it will show you a preview of an AAMA DXF file, which is a little different than a CAD file. So move over here. So you can see this little icon here. That is the symbol for the free Autodesk plugin that you can add to your Google Chrome browser and view these in email. So as you can see, this is the outlines of the pattern pieces in a preview mode. So if you can't see that when you first download this file, don't panic. It'll still come into the Clo 3D software just fine. So now I'm back over here at Clo 3D. I have the Lacala AAMA DXF file downloaded to my hard drive. So now I'm going to go to File, Import Add, because I already have an item here, Import Add DXF AAMA ASTM. Here's where I have my pattern saved, and I click on Open. Most of the time, choosing Auto Scale works just fine, and I leave the options alone unless I come across a problem when I import. And if I do, I'll try something else and re-import the file. I'm going to click OK. And like magic, I have the pattern pieces imported perfectly into Clo 3D. So what this would be of value to me as somebody who sews for myself is I can create an avatar that's very similar to my own body shape. I can bring in a sewing pattern. In this case, it was an AAMA DX file, but don't worry, you're not limited to just DXF files. You can also bring in PDF patterns, but I'm going to show that separately from the DXF process here. So what I'm going to show you next briefly is how I will take the 2D pattern, in which case is already cut and has a fabric applied. We can change the fabric properties. Now I do only have one unique piece or one side of the garment here in the 3D window, and you can see in the 3D window I can move the pattern pieces around, and as you probably guessed, I'm going to be able to sew these onto my avatar. This over here is the 2D window. The pieces are flat, and really you want to think of these more so as pattern pieces, as opposed to, even though fabric is applied, you can manipulate these pieces as patterns by changing the size and shape and adding different elements, which of course you wouldn't be able to do in real life if you had already cut your pattern out in fabric. So we'll just pretend that this is the paper pattern and this is the pattern pieces already cut out. It just so happens whatever you magically change to the pattern will also change to the cut pieces that are in fabric. Now I might speed through some of the parts because this is mainly just giving you an overview so you can get to know the program a little bit. In other videos, I'll have a project that you can follow along on, and I'll be much slower and much more detailed. So what I'm doing here in the 2D window is I'm dragging a box around all pattern pieces. I'm going to rotate these. I'm holding down the shift key so that I can lock the axis. Now it didn't rotate over here in the 3D window, but since I highlighted everything here, they're still highlighted over here. So I don't have to be perfect over here in the 3D window with the avatar, but I just want it to be in the ballpark. So what I did is, with all of them highlighted, I have this little gizmo to let me do different things. I can rotate the pieces. Now I can rotate one piece at a time, but it just so happened I wanted to rotate all of my pieces. Now I can also rotate them front to back. And I'm just simply holding my mouse over this item and rotating it back and forth. Now I happen to have a pin mouse, but you can do this with a regular mouse as well. And here for this arrow, I'm going side to side. If I grab this blue guy with a knob, I can go back and forth. And the yellow one will allow you to simply pan around. The next thing I'm going to do with all of my pieces highlighted, because I know that they are just 1/2 of the pattern pieces that I need for the full garment, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a separate pattern with cloning. So clone pattern with linked editing, symmetric pattern with sewing, and that simply means whatever sewing actions I do to the left front bodice will automatically apply to the right front bodice, and so on and so forth. And now these have automatically copied these in a mirrored orientation. And all these little blue lines tell me that this pattern is linked to this pattern. So when I did the copy and paste, they all linked together. Now these are little facing pieces. I probably don't need those at the moment to test my pattern. Of course, there's 2 back pieces. I only need 1 front piece, so I deleted that guy there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange these in a way that makes visual sense to me. My bodice pieces, my skirt pieces, I'm assuming these are the front, and I'm assuming with the little scoop in the back that this is the side back. So you see I'm just grabbing and dragging. The sleeve I need to rotate Ah, that's new. I didn't realize that if I rotate one with the linked editing, it automatically rotates the other. So I'm assuming this is the back here, and this is the front here, and these two will live together. And same for here. This is the back, and this is the front. So the goal here, and again, I won't spend too much time on this one since it's just to give you an overview. I'm going to apply a little bit of sewing so you see what's going on, but then I will pause this video and apply most of the sewing to it so you don't have to sit through all of that for this demonstration video. To make things easier to sew the pieces and arrange the pieces onto your avatar, Clo3D has something very handy called arrangement points. There's a little avatar icon here with an eyeball, and then there's a bunch of dots right here. This little symbol will turn on these arrangement dots all around the avatar. So let's say I grab the front bodice, and I've already linked these together, you saw that. And if I hover here, it will arrange both of those bodice pieces. And then once they're in the general location, I can double click on them and fine tune them. I usually have things, I don't know what I just did there. That's why we really like Control Z. I'll just, even though her bosom is poking through there, it will still work out fine. I'm just going to get these in the ballpark and go from there. Okay, this guy is in the way, this is in the way. So that was the front bodice. Now is the front skirt. I'm highlighting this side here, and it automatically places them both symmetrically. I'm going to, I have my settings to where I can hold down Shift and my right mouse button to rotate. Back bodice, those are arranged. Back skirt, those are a little high, but I can adjust those one by one. And same thing will happen for the petals. This is the front, this side here. And again, just kind of in the ballpark. And we have the back piece here. And that applied it to both sides. So I don't know about you, but I would rather sit here and do a virtual muslin mock-up of a pattern that I haven't ever seen before on my specific body. So it definitely comes in handy to mock up a pattern to see what it looks like on you. But even better, you can adjust the pattern to fit you better or modify the design details, and then you can export this pattern and print it out and use it. So I'm going to continue on with the sewing, and again, I'll try to keep this very brief. I've turned off the arrangement points. And now I'm going to use the sewing feature. Now this sewing machine with a straight line simply means I'm going to sew straight segments together, such as this center front. And don't worry right now that there's a center front seam, even though your real pattern will be cut on the fold. We can merge these later. This sewing machine with the little S shape here is for free sewing. That means I can sew curves freely together, or I could still sew straight lines with the free sewing, but I can combine different segments together and curves together. So let's try out the straight sewing. I'm going to sew this edge to this edge. So I go click, and you see the little crossbar pretend notch there. That gives you a reference so you don't accidentally do your sewing upside down for the side that it corresponds to. So I'm going to click here. Now, when you look over here in your simulation window, you can see that those two are sewn together. I'm going to actually spread those apart. And you can even see there's stitching there. And you can turn this on or off, but I enjoy seeing the visual as well. So next I'm going to sew the side seams together, this side to this side. And even though this is curvy, it is still a single segment, so it seems to work just fine. This side to this side. Same thing with the center front skirts. Now you can see that these are two separate segments here. So this would be a good opportunity. I could sew the segments separately, but this would be a good opportunity for me to show you the curved sewing. So this goes to this. And since it's linked sewing, it automatically sews all of that together. And here's what I have so far. I'm going to sew the sleeves together. Now this is going to be a little tricky since it's a petal sleeve. It doesn't look like the notches are there, but I think we can figure it out. That actually looks a little odd to me. Maybe something needs to be rotated. Well, there's a few little tricks that I can use to get all of this to true up. There is a feature for walking the seams together and adding notches. But in this case, I'm just going to cheat a little bit with my free sewing tool, and you will see how one edge can correspond to another. So free sewing edge, I'm going to start at the armhole, and you can even see the little numbers there telling me what that size is. In this case, it's 8.49, 8.5 basically. So I started at the side seam up to the shoulder, click, and now I want to start at the side seam, and as you see, I'm continuing around. See that little blue dot there? Now I'm perfectly aligned with the shoulder. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the back armhole, and look at there, I know it's exactly 9.3 inches. Really great if the particular pattern that you have doesn't include the finished garment measurements. So I have that there. And what I have left to do is my shoulders. I'm going to use the straight segment tool, this guy to this guy. Now I also need to sew the waist together. I think we are missing a dart here, which I could address in another video, what to do if you're missing a few symbols from your original pattern. But in this case, I'm just going to gather this on. So, segment tool, free sewing, this to this, and that's just going to gather that in there since it's not the same size. And same thing here, this to this. Now you can see all these stitches together. And so the next fun part is we are going to simulate. And when we simulate, we push this arrow here, and that's going to cause all of the sewing to activate. Now you can use this arrow to simulate, or you can use the space bar on your keyboard. I'm going to hit the space bar, and it sewed all of this together. Now I still need a little cleanup with my sleeves. You can see it didn't sew those together. So I'm just going to overlap the back over the front. I'm going to turn off simulation. I'm going to go to my free sewing, and I said I want the back over the front. Oh, and I'll also have to sew the front to the back. All right, so let's try this. We're going to go from here to here and here to here. spacebar to simulate, and it's jumbled. Now in this case, I have the wrong edge going over the wrong edge, so I'm going to superimpose over. Let's see if that helps. And it did. All right, so right now I'm not going to finish this last little detail because this is just an overview so you can see what's possible. But now let's go to fabrics. The default fabric is very forgiving, very gummy, very quick here in the 3D window. But I want to see now what this fabric is like, what this fit of this garment is like in actual fabric properties. And you can see I didn't sew the underarm seam here, but you get the idea. So I'm going to go to my library here, and I'm going to click on fabric. There's a lot of great stuff here. So let's say you can do a muslin, you can do all kinds of fabrics here, and you can even customize fabric properties. I'm going to say we're using a knit cotton jersey, so I'm going to hold that down and drag it over to my fabric choice. I can import a print if I wanted to. I can change the color if I want to. But at the moment, this simulation is in draft mode, so to speak. So I need to increase the quality of this render so that the fabric will be more accurate. And I can do that with fitting accurate without doing too high of a resolution, so to speak, too high of a quality. The higher quality in this software, it's particle distance, the number of particles packed in a certain square inch, so to speak. The more your computer has to work to simulate all of that stuff. So the default particle distance is 5, and a higher particle distance would be, this is the distance between each particle. So particle distance 5 would give you a high property, 7 a little bit less, more stable. So just so that you can see what that means, I will click OK, and it'll take. And now that I'm high quality, the sky is turned red, and it'll take a moment to calculate all of these little threads that are actually in the fabric. Now, you only want to go this high quality route with both the accurate fabric setting and the lower particle distance, meaning the distance between the particles, once you've arrived at everything that you want done about the pattern. So if I wanted to go in here and change the fit of this pattern, it's not good to have it with the high quality render, the high quality simulation, because it'll go very slow. If you noticed before, when I was grabbing on to the fabric, it was very quick and gummy, and now it's not even responding. It's a very slow, painful process here. So I'm going to change it back to regular simulation. I'll show you just a few quick changes to the styling and fit of this garment, and then we'll wrap this particular video up. Okay, so I've changed this back to a faster simulation by making it not such a high particle distance. So now let's say this is actually something that I want to play around with. Now let's say I don't like this position of the waist. Perhaps I feel like it should be higher up, and more ampere, that might be more flattering to my personal avatar here. And don't worry about the chunky gathers. There's plenty of little tricks if you really want to get a good looking render for aesthetic purposes, but for muslin mock-up kind of test fit stuff, you really just want to keep it simple. But the program does have the ability to do some really amazing things. And we'll clean up this fit position on the avatar here in a moment. What I wanted to demonstrate was I'm going to drag a box around the waistline of the bodice and the waist of the skirt. Actually, I'm just going to start with the bodice so I can actually transform my editing pattern. I'm grabbing just here, and since it's linked, it's going to grab both sides, and I'm going to raise this. You can see the number changing. I'm going to raise this 2 inches. So now I have raised the bodice 2 inches, but of course I'm probably going to want to raise the waist of my skirt as well. You can see that change instantly. And now I'm going to also raise the skirt waist 2 inches. And now I'm going to hit spacebar to simulate. And I can decide, hey, I actually like that better. And since we're kind of in the gummy low resolution, so to speak, now I feel like it's not so flattering here. So let's say I wanted to make it a little more A-line, and I'm going to edit. Ooh, there's lots of curve points here. I wanted to show you an A-line, so let me see if I can. Nope, that was not a good idea. Control Z. Okay, I haven't brought in a locality-except before, and I didn't realize there's actually quite a few curve points added. So I'm actually going to edit the curve points because I want to see what an A-line looks like. So now that that's turned on, all these red spots, it looks like a solid line, but it's really a lot of dots. So I'm going to drag a box around that and hit delete. And this is getting rid of curve points. And I'll try here. All right, so now I'm left with a straight line there. And now I can transform a pointer segment and make this more A-line. And that works better for me. So you can see I instantly changed the fit to where it falls over my tummy instead of straining and crashing over it. Now, if you want to see the style lines a little bit more, there's a feature. I know it by heart on my keyboard as Alt-0, and that turns on, kind of gives you, this is actually new in version 6, the very thick lines here. So I'm going to make the pixels smaller, seam lines smaller. You can change the line color so you can see that a little better. So I think that wraps it up for this particular demonstration so that you can see the possible application of making your own custom avatar, bringing in a pattern, which can be a DXF, it can be a PDF, it can even be just an image of a pattern that you can then trace over and change it to life size and adjust on your avatar. Now, if I wanted to make further changes to this pattern, I could. If I wanted to see what it looked like in a different print fabric, if I have a graphic file of a particular print, I can do that. And then I can also export this pattern, print it out, and actually use it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.